Good morning from the Nature Company. Today we're going to be teaching you about repotting Cattleyas. We're going to show you how to repot, pot up, transplant. We'll be showing you what media to use, when to do it, why we're doing it, and how to do it. The reasons that we're potting up these Cattleya, we can see already the new strong growth that is coming out is starting to extend beyond the pot, and we want to get it while this growth is still fresh and young so it can reset good roots into the new media and into the new pot. So we can see these are all just going to spread out and grow out over the pot and be difficult to repot afterwards. Also, we notice the media is starting to decompose. We can see the whiteness on the edges of the media, which just shows salt buildup. That's why you'll notice some of the roots are dying at the top of the pot. So this one's in desperate need of a repot to get rid of all the old media and to be put into something fresh. Okay, with repotting them, all we're going to be basically doing is squeezing around the pot to loosen up the roots and the media in the pots. Just gently take hold of your plant, turn it upside down, pulling the pot away. Just loosen up the bark around the roots. Here we can see good, strong, fresh root growth that we want to keep. We want to remove as much of the old media as possible in case any of it is soured or it has any bacterial or fungal problems that will be transplanted into the new pot. Okay, looking at our plant, we can see one of the old PSEUDOBULBS has started to yellow up. We can see all the little bud points have started to perish, so this is to be taken off. Always remember the sanitization. Keep your equipment clean. We're just going to go in, cut it back right at the base and pull it away. We're just going to look under to see what old roots need to be trimmed off. Just by removing all the old dead material, you're lessening the chance of bacterial rots getting in. Okay. So we'll just look through our plant. We'll notice all these sheaths that are still around the PSEUDOBULBS as they're maturing. We're just going to remove these off, making sure there's no insects hiding in underneath. Also exposing the lateral buds. Gives them an easier job at expanding and pushing out further. We notice on the new growth how little root volume there is. This was from the souring of the media from overfeeding with all these salt buildups, which the Cattleyas really don't like, and they try and keep their roots away from, so they just don't produce any roots to go into the media. And we notice how many small lateral buds that we do have on this plant. So with exposing all of these now to the light, it generally forces all of them to mature into PSEUDOBULBS, and they'll all produce flowers. So if we look after them like this, we can get a much bushier, fuller plant faster, as well as getting more flowers out of it. Here we notice some purple reddish coloration on your Cattleya. This is not necessarily anything to be worried about. It's often just from overexposure to light. As we can see, generally it's a very healthy plant. Otherwise, And look at all that good root volume. With Cattleya, it's relatively easy to tell the difference between the rotten roots or the old dead roots and the healthy roots. Often you'll see with the healthy roots, they fairly white color. The dead roots are generally brown, sort of like a grayish color. So all of those that can be cut off. They're also soft and squishy, or the velamins come off and all you can see is the root itself. Those all can be removed completely. Often people will divide their plants when repotting or potting up. Then you generally want to keep a bare minimum of 3 pseudobulbs per plant. Generally I like to go for around 4. That gives a much larger plant that's going to struggle less, have less of transplant shock, and carry on growing beautifully and flower without stopping. The smaller the divides you make, the longer it's going to take to reflower. The fewer pseudobulbs that are attached to the pieces that you remove, the more likelihood that the plant itself will just die. So there we go. None of these we're actually going to be dividing. We're just going to be keeping them as full plants. Yeah, we see some really nice, good, strong, fresh roots on this plant. Just shows how healthy it is. The bark on this isn't too decomposed, so we're not necessarily going to be trying too hard to remove all the bark from this plant, because we don't want to destroy too many of the good roots that have caught onto the bark nicely. Also, often you can see this red coloration here on the leaves and the red spots. This is not a fungal attack. This is also exposure to light. There's certain Cattleyas which are particularly prone or apt to getting this coloration. It's nothing to be worried about, especially if you've been keeping up with your fungal treatments. You don't have a problem. Now, with potting up the Cattleya that came out of the small pot, we're going to be potting up to a fair size larger. This is a fairly quick growing Cattleya that's going to produce quite large pseudobulbs, and I'm going to be potting it in a mix which is long lasting, so I can use the bigger pot. So what we're going to be using for this Cattleya is LACA. LACA is clay which has been heat expanded. It's a very light media. It has a high EC value which draws minerals and the water up and around it, so it moves water around the pot freely, but also leaving large air spaces for your orchid to breathe. So we'll also be adding a relatively fine grade fir bark into this mix, just to hold that little bit extra water. So we just make a nice light mix with, I would say it's approximately 2/3 LACA and 1/3 fir bark. And then just before potting, I like to give it a quick spray with ginger. This is the ginger tonic we make. You can check out in our previous video on how to make the ginger tonic. This is a good root tonic to help push out new roots, and its antibacterial and antifungal properties just help settle the plant in well. We'll just put some down to the bottom of the pot. Then placing our Cattleya in with the oldest part of the plant closest to the edge, because our Cattleyas grow in a direction. And then we'll just be filling in around. So we've left the new growth here, as much space as possible to keep growing forward and sideways so that your pot still stays relatively full from all angles. We've filled up the orchid all the way to the base of the rhizome, this without covering the rhizome. We want to allow the fresh air to get all the way to that part of the plant, because as we notice, this is where all the little buds, lateral buds, come from, and we don't want to cover this up. The more light they get, the more likely they're going to sprout and produce more pseudobulbs, and then we get more flowers. There we go. So that's the potting up. With the repotting, we're taking a pot much the same size and same volume as what we originally had, and we're going to be putting our orchid back into that. Also, again, we're going to be setting it up against the back side of the pot so it can grow forward, still leaving space to grow in the front. So with this method, we've got a terracotta pot, which allows for fast drainage of your media. The water gets absorbed directly from the pot itself, which draws the water from the media as well. So it's a wonderful pot to use for Cattleyas. We'll just take a little bit of LACA, and we'll just do one small layer of LACA at the bottom of the pot. This is just to ensure that the air movement can still come up through the hole in the bottom. We'll carefully get all our roots into the pot. And you'll notice we'll have all these gaps here that we're going to have to fill with media. And with this, because it's a terracotta pot and it allows for that water to be absorbed out through the sides, we're just going to be using fine bark. This is going to allow for the extra water retention capacity as opposed to the bark being mixed with the LACA. So here we're just going to get our bark in and gently work it in through the middle of the plant and in under the roots. If you notice, we're not compacting down. All we're doing is just making sure that all those little gaps are filled with media. There we go. And see there again, the rhizome is up above the surface of the media, allowing for all those wonderful little buds to pop out and produce new pseudobulbs. And now for the transplanting the orchid from a pot into a wire hanging basket. We've measured out the amount of bark we're going to be needing. Here we've used a much coarser grade. This is a medium pine bark. So this is going to allow for lots of air movement. This we're going to water fairly frequently. We'll actually be able to dunk it straight into a pot of water every time we need to. And these little wire baskets are so easy to make at home. All we're going to do is put a small layer of these bark nuggets at the bottom, and we'll take our orchid. Again, we're looking for the back of the plant, moving that towards the one edge. The medium chunks like this take a long time to degrade, so we're not going to have to worry about this for a good couple of years yet. Yeah, with this we can give it a little bit of force downwards just to make sure that the bark's all in position holding the orchid, because as I say, this is going to be out hanging in the open air, so there's going to be lots and lots of air movement around the roots and the plant itself, so we can just make sure that it's stable. Yeah, your roots are just going to expand out through your wire basket, so they're going to get lots of air, and we're going to keep this moist enough to keep it happy. Cattleyas don't need too much water. They like to be able to dry out between waterings. So if you can, this is probably a more ideal way to grow your Cattleyas. If you found any of this information that we've offered in this video helpful, please hit that like button. That subscribe button below helps us tremendously. And press that notification bell if you want to be notified of any of our upcoming videos. Help us grow as we help your orchids grow. Happy gardening.